Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Darius top lane. One of the better top laners that people kind of forget about, especially if you're newer at the game. Like, there's not a lot to him mechanically, and he has a lot of stats behind him. He's one of the few champions that can like actually 1v3, 1v2, etc. So starting off with the keystone is going to be Conquer. Your basic attacks and abilities build up Adaptive Force, and then at max stacks, you gain more AD, and then when Conquer's fully stacked, you heal for 15% of the damage you deal to champions. So with Darius, it's one of like the highest synergy runes in the game. Your natural combo is, let's say, pulling someone, auto WQ, and then 2 more auto attacks will give you the fully stacked Conquer. But even without the fully stacked Conquer, just a little bit of AD is going to be adding to your bleed damage immediately. It's going to be adding to your auto attacks and every other ability as well. Since Darius has natural armor pin in his E, you also don't have to buy any armor pin items or even like flat AD items for that matter, because Darius is usually spending his HP pool to get more damage off on the enemies. And with Conqueror, it makes it so that you're taking so much damage and then you heal a percentage, and then you take so much damage and then you heal again. Especially when you're fighting multiple targets, whenever you land your Q on multiple targets, you're going to be applying the bleed to multiple targets. You're also going to be healing more because you hit more champions with the Q. And yeah, it's just more and more healing, and that's effectively all Darius needs is just more HP to play with, and that's what Conqueror gives him. The extra damage on top of it is kind of just nice. So fantastic rune for him. The way that you're going to be using it early game in the lane is it's just a higher punish for landing your combo naturally. So whenever you land a pull on someone, or even when you just walk on them with your auto W, then it's still just going to be giving you effectively more damage throughout the early part. But then once mid game comes, you need to try to get it stacked up before you flash onto 5 people, because you're going to get more value out of it once you're on top of multiple champions. So come mid game, you want to approach team fights by maybe like hitting their tank or whoever's in the front, and then building up Conqueror with a couple of autos or maybe the W, and then flashing on the enemy carries with your E and Q. So that's that. Second rune is going to be Triumph. Takedowns restore 12% of your missing health and then grant you an additional 20 gold. Pretty similar to Conquer, where it's just going to give you more effective HP. And since Darius's kit also revolves around executing champions, the synergy with this rune is pretty high, as you want to get on top of a lot of champions. Like, you could have 20% HP left, you dunk someone, that's going to give you 12% back, and then your Q comes back up, that's going to heal you. Any damage you're dealing is also going to heal you from Conqueror, so great synergy with not only the kit, but also with the keystone. For the secondary runes, your greedy option is Alacrity, giving you more attack speed, but the standard option is Tenacity. Depending on your lane matchup, though, and the enemy team comp, you should really consider running Alacrity when you can. I would say your default should be Legend Tenacity, as it gives you 5% Tenacity that then stacks up more. So it's effectively like giving you Merc Treads once fully stacked. And in matchups with like any CC, so if the enemy's playing like Ornn, Nautilus, Support, Thresh, etc., then getting the Tenacity from this feels pretty good, especially since like you don't necessarily have to itemize into Merc Treads because of this rune. And then if you do end up doing that, especially against a CC heavy team, then it's going to be giving you even more value. But if your lane matchup doesn't have any CC, which a lot of top lane matchups don't, then the attack speed is going to be giving you more value, because it's just a better laning tool, and it's a better tool to just beat down the champions that Darius like already naturally beats. And that's why it's a greedy option, because you don't really need it to beat the matchups you're already going to beat, but if you have it, it is going to help. So that's that. For the fourth rune, you have the good options of Coup de Grace or Last Stand. It's kind of the same thing, where Coup de Grace is nice because you're going to be killing the champions that you naturally beat anyways more often. But with Last Stand, you deal 5 to 11% increased damage to champions while you're below 60% health. Last Stand is going to give you a lot better value come mid to late game, as Darius, again, he's spending his HP early in a fight and then trying to heal it up like as he's fighting. So he's approaching the enemy, he's taking damage, he builds up Conquer on one target, and then he gets on top of the carries or multiple champions, and then is going to be healing off Conqueror, the Q, and then trying to execute someone. So with Last Stand, you're going to be dealing more damage in those situations. With Coupe de Grace, it's going to give you a little bit easier lethals in lane, or it's going to help you kill squishier targets. So depending on the matchups, you probably switch Coupe de Grace or Last Stand. Defaultly though, I would recommend Coupe de Grace. It's just the plainest and simplest to use, and then it's also going to help you find your lethals in the laning phase, especially if you're new at Darius. Secondary rune tree is going to be Resolve with Bone Plating, and your good options here are Demolish and Overgrowth. With Demolish, you charge up a attack against towers. So Demolish basically is for whenever you kill your lane, it's going to let you take a turret plate and then recall. And then if that gold is going to outweigh the health you would gain from Overgrowth, then it's worth. With Overgrowth, you absorb Life Essence from monsters or enemy minions that die near you permanently, gaining 3 max health. And then once you've absorbed 120 monsters or enemy minions, pretty much just minions, you gain an additional 3.5 maximum health. So this rune's pretty good on Darius, but you can kind of make an argument that Demolish is going to be outweighing it if you are winning, because you're going to be able to get the health from the gold granted by the turret plates, and then whenever you're buying the health, it's also going to accelerate your build path, because completing Black Cleaver into either Spirit Visage, Sterix, etc. is going to be giving you a harder spike than just having the more health here. Because you get the passive of the items once they're completed, basically just with Sterix. But Overgrowth does just have better scaling, so depending on the matchups, you'd probably shift these. And the default I'd recommend is Demolish, as it's, again, just more synergistic where you're trying to just win lane, win game. And in solo queue, it becomes pretty impactful. Especially since Darius, he builds so much health and not so much damage, and then come mid to late game, you just don't deal that much damage to towers if you're like playing in the side lane. For the adaptive runes, it's going to be attack speed, adaptive force, and then you can go scaling health, and when you can, you should. Most of your matchups, like most of the melee matchups, you already have enough base armor in the kit, so the scaling health, he's one of the few champions who can pull this off. The scaling health makes your naturally winning lane like even more brutal for the enemy. Since you're going to be playing in the top lane, you're going to be getting about the second most experience in the game after mid lane. So getting the levels to get the more value out of this rune isn't so bad. And then missing out on the armor or magic resist in some matchups, or mostly just the armor in most matchups, doesn't even matter, because Darius just has control over the early laning phase. The attack speed, obviously, maybe not so obviously, where you don't get to itemize any attack speed for Darius, so having this from the start is pretty good. It makes your level 1 even more brutal if you get on top of the enemy, because a simple like 3 auto attacks on an enemy laner and you're winning lane on Darius. So the attack speed is going to give you more attacks per second whenever you're trying to attack the enemy champion, but then it's also going to help you control the minion wave without having to spend abilities. And then adaptive force is going to give you 6 attack damage early, which is just pretty natural for him. More damage on every single auto attack and on every single instance of damage that Darius has. So that's that. These are the default runes I'd recommend on Darius. Now let's talk about a bit of the variation. For the secondary runes, if you're playing into caster champions like Ornn, Mordekaiser, Rumble, you're going to get way more value out of Second Wind. With Second Wind versus Bone Plating, Bone Plating's like the best into melee matchups, which is what you want to be picking Darius into anyways, as he like naturally wins them. And with Bone Plating, after you take damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks you receive from them deal less damage. So Bone Plating effectively just gives you more HP. It's on a 45-second cooldown, but that's completely fine, as that's about the timing that the enemy has to like attack you anyways, like in between their cooldowns and then in between like the proper minion wave timings. With Second Wind, after you take damage from an enemy champion, you heal for 4% of your missing health, plus 6 for 10 seconds. So with the caster champions top lane, again, champions like Ornn, Rumble, Mordekaiser, where they're short range champions, but they have these medium range abilities, and they can kind of just like whittle you down without you really noticing it with those abilities. But with Second Wind, like you offset so much of their damage, and then that in combination with Doran's shield like kind of negates their poke advantage altogether. So then it can make it where you can just eat those abilities and it doesn't matter, and then run into them. And they have, once their poke ability is down, they're kind of defenseless most of the time. So you engage on them once, you're either attacking their mana or you're attacking their HP, and then one trade into another is usually a lethal for Darius. Again, with Overgrowth, I think this is better in losing matchups. I'll get more into that with the secondary Keystone. The other options for secondary runes aren't that good in my opinion. Like something like Nimbus Cloak and Celerity, if you're running Ghost, I don't think is that required, as most of the time you're looking to just punish the enemy laner when they look to CS, not so much run them down on cooldown and kill them regardless. And with most champions in the top lane, they're going to you're either going to be pushing into them, or when the lane's even, you want the stats to a 1v2, and that's what Resolve gives you. With Nimbus Cloak, you do have the advantage of being able to press Ghost, walk past the minion wave, and then potentially kill the enemy champion, but that's usually just not required to win the game. With Darius, again, since he's such a threatening champion, you're probably just denying the enemy gold through denying them CS, and then that's a kill in itself versus like having to kill the champion. With Domination Second, there's really nothing for you here. Ravenous and Taste of Blood isn't that good, as Ravenous only heals off your abilities, so it'd mostly be your Q and your ult. The ult might heal you a lot, but the other ones wouldn't. And then, yeah, again, just wouldn't outweigh Resolve Secondary, in my opinion. And then with Inspiration Secondary, other champions just make better use of all of this. Perfect Timing sounds interesting, but since you don't itemize into a perfect timing item in Gargoyles or Guardian Angel, then I'm not seeing it with that either. So let's talk about Phase Rush, where you have the option of running this into ranged top laners. So with this page, I think that if you're playing into, you don't see it that often, but I think it's a higher MMR thing as well, where if you're playing into the ranged top laners, you're naturally going to lose lane, but with Phase Rush, it allows you to run them down once they expend their like one safety ability. So let's say the meta ranged top laners, champions like Quinn, Lucian, and then Ryze. Once Ryze spends his W, that would be your time to press Ghost and then just run at him. Same thing with Quinn. If she spends her jump, then again you press Ghost and just walk past the minion wave and run him down. Same thing with Lucian. Once he spins his dash, then you would do the same. You don't even have to run Ghost in these matchups, but that's the matchups where you would actually get value out of running Ghost, where once they spend their dash abilities, or if you're receiving a gank, then you actually have the movement speed to run them down, because that's Darius' biggest weakness, is that he just is slow. And against ranged champions, especially ones with dashes, then it's incredibly just impossible for him to get onto them without the extra movement speed from something like Ghost. And then with Nimbus Cloak plus Ghost, then it's going to help you, like, again, just move all the way up the top lane, since top lane's such a long lane. So even if they're dashing and flashing away, you can still probably get them. With Celerity, all movement bonuses are 7% more effective, and you gain plus 1% movement speed. If the enemy champion has like any slows to apply to you, especially come mid game, that's when you get more value out of Celerity. It's kind of just the best option in this rune, especially since you're like conceding to lose early game. Back to the Keystone, I kind of just went pretty general with this. With the Keystone, Phase Rush, hitting an enemy champion with 3 attacks or separate abilities grants you bonus movement speed and 75% slow resist. So again, like once you land a pull onto them and then you would auto EQ, then you're going to be proccing Phase Rush, and then you're going to get the movement speed to just chase them down more. And Nimbus Cloak is going to give you the more movement speed after flashing or ghosting, and then Celerity, again, more movement speed, because all that really matters is that you get on top of these champions at the timings that you're stronger than them, so level 6, level 9, etc. And then for the 4th rune, Scorch isn't going to be giving you good value because, again, you're just getting pushed in all game, or like most of the early game by the ranged champions. So Gathering Storm is going to offset a bit of the, since it's a naturally losing lane, you're going to just be down CS no matter what. And with Gathering Storm, it's going to give you bonus AD like per 10 minutes. And that helps offset the gold deficit by a bit. Not a crazy amount, but it does. And then with the secondary runes, it's probably going to be Second Wind since you're playing into the ranged matchups. And Second Wind is better into those, similar to like the caster matchups like I was saying, where Second Wind is going to make it so that every single time they damage you, you're going to be healing. So that in combination with Doran Shield makes it so that you can effectively CS without having to recall for a lot longer of a time. And that's all you're looking to do from levels like 1 to 6 against the ranged champions, unless you're receiving a gank. And then with Overgrowth, I would recommend this in these matchups because you're not going to be hitting tower like literally ever. And with Overgrowth, again, you absorb life essence from monsters and minions. Once you absorb 120, you receive 3.5 additional max health. So with Overgrowth, it helps, similar to Gathering Storm, it helps offset the losing part of the matchup early, where you are going to be down gold against the champion, but you don't have to be down stats. You can still be up, or you can still be even in experience, and then you would still be getting health from Overgrowth. You're not going to have as fast itemization because you're not going to have the gold to buy the ruby crystals, but you're still going to have the effective health from Overgrowth because you exist in the lane and then you build it up versus running Demolish in those matchups. And then since you're into ranged champions, you do lose a good amount of value from the attack speed. So I think running AD would be fine. This would give you 12 AD. So once you're actually on top of the enemy champions, then you're still going to have the damage to like finish them off because you don't really need to attack them that many times. It's just a couple autos and then a couple rotations of the W and Q, and you probably have them. And since you're in a losing matchup, the scaling health loses a lot of value. So if you're playing into, again, Lucian Quinn, you obviously want to be running the armor secondary, as the flat resistance is going to give you way more value than the effective, or the scaling health early, and you're just looking to survive early game with this rune setup. And then if you're playing into Rise, Cassiopeia, etc., you would run the magic resist. So with this page, again, I think it's better into the ranged top laners, but it's kind of like an adaptive solo queue thing where you don't want to be picking Darius into those champions, but if you happen to go into that matchup, like this is your best bet because it just gives you the ability to run them down and stay on them, and that's all Darius has to do. He doesn't need like extra damage from the runes or whatnot to kill the ranged top laners. Because if you were to run like the exact same page against those champions, once you have Conqueror built up, usually the ranged champion has like dashed the second time or flashed away from you. So building it up is a bitch in itself, and then it's not going to give you any value in the all-in because the healing is almost irrelevant. It's just how much damage you deal once you're on top of them. And then if you can stay on top of them, because staying on top of the enemy champion for Darius is killing them again. And then the tenacity would give you no value, the attack speed would give you no value. Or not no value, but just lesser value. So that's the runes for Darius. It was kind of extended here, but yeah. This video helped you. Leaving a like on the video helps me. And fuck, what else do I say, man? Twitch.tv/SollyNelson, links in the description. I don't play Darius. I main support, and I usually just talk about League of Legends on the Twitch channel. I think gameplay is kind of overdone. everybody just plays for 10 hours. It's whatever. Shit. I know I say something else. If this video helped you, leaving a like helps me. Sorry, Nelson. That's the Twitch. That's all I got, man. Hope this video helped. Bye-bye. See you later. See you later. Revitalize is a scam. Don't worry about it, man. Bye-bye. See ya.